newborn kits and surviving the cold. How cold can you breed your rabbits and expect litters to survive all the things? So I used to not breed does from like the end of November all the way through March. Now that we have the barn, I'm a little bit more willing, but I've also had some experiences where a litter survived in like temperatures I would have thought they would have not made it. So they can be tougher than you think. So let me ease your thought process on that. So I'm going to go through some things that will help you make sure that they are successful, but some things to watch out for in case it happens. But there are some reasons why, if you don't have to breed in the wintertime, I wouldn't. So the main reasons you really would not want to breed during the wintertime is, for one, obviously it's a little bit stressful and they can get cold really quick within about 30 minutes if they have no protection and they have no fur. They're pretty much not going to make it if they get out of the nest or unprotected or anything like that. So it's a very small window of catching it if they're going to make it. And then for when they are growing and things like that, I feel like they do tend to get a little bit thicker as far as coat goes quickly, but they're spending their energy on staying warm instead of growing, I think. And then it's not to say that they won't get to their full size, but when they are smaller or when they're younger and still growing, I think their energy tends to not go into growing as well. And then the other real big issue is they could end up with eye infections, because when they're little and they're in the nest, they're like all balled up together trying to stay warm, which is fine. But then when they get to that like 10 to 14 day mark, when their eyes should be opening, they're still so like this trying to stay warm. And so they're not naturally pulling at their little eyelids to get them open. And so then dirt and gunk gets under there. And I've had a few instances where I've had to use an antibiotic ointment that is, unfortunately, now you have to go to a vet to get. So we'll find an alternative for that eventually. And there is an alternative on Amazon that I will link to that I think will work. And I have shared it with other people who have had rabbits with eye issues, and it has worked. But it almost gets like, if you've ever dealt with an abscess for rabbits, it's softer, but it's a very like cloudy gunk that is amazing of how much dirt they can end up with in their eye if they're holding it together. So it's just something you don't want to have to deal with. Fortunately, but if you've pre-bred, and like for us this year, December was a surprisingly cold year or cold month. And so you got to deal with what you got to deal with. So we're going to go look at, we've only got one litter right now. So let's look at him, and I'll use the examples of how I check to make sure that they are warm enough. But this kit is about 2.5 weeks old now. Let's go look at him and see, or I'll use that nest as an example to show you at least what I do. All right, so this was unfortunately a single baby as well. He was naughty just now and got out, so he's recovering from getting a little bit cooler than he would like. So normally, obviously, he's a little bit older, but when there is a nest, they've got the circle and Mama's got her cloud of fur over top of them. And so what I would do is stick my fingers down in without pulling the fur open before I look at them, just to see, like, as a fly on the wall, does it feel warm in there? And what I've also done is I will put hand warmers in my gloves to make sure that my fingers stay as warm as possible, so I'm not mistaking warmth for them still being a little bit on the cool side. And then after that, then I'll open them and look at them and make sure that they aren't moist. So this is an example of these hand warmers that I will stick into the palm of my glove. And then that's just enough heat that it tends to travel up your fingers a little bit and keep your hands warm. So I'll link to these as well. They're super cheap. Right now they're like $10 on Amazon. So I really like them. You only need them on, like, they've got 3 levels at level 1, or otherwise it gets hot. But you can see the power button, and then that shows you the 3 levels that they are at heat-wise. So I've really liked using those to help keep my hands warm, and then enable me to stick my hands down and tell what's real, when we're in there. Now, the next thing you really want to check for is moisture, because when a nest is so full of fur, and again, they're staying tight around each other, they're peeing, they are also breathing a little bit of moisture, so it doesn't escape that. And so when they're really tight, and then if Mama's done a lot of fur, when they need it to stay warm, that's a good thing, but then that also can hold the moisture in. And once you're able to just quickly uncover them, and what you're going to look at is wrinkles, that there's a difference between whether they're getting fed wrinkles versus their fur looking wet. Unfortunately, I don't have too many pictures of that, obviously because I avoid it happening, but really it looks kind of like maybe wet paper would be a good example of what happens after it dries. So it's usually across the back, and then their fur just kind of looks wrinkled. It's kind of strange. It's not curly wrinkled, but like it kind of got wet and wrinkled up. So if they are getting wet, and they usually tend to act a little bit colder, and the straw is still damp, then you need to swap it out. So let's talk about swapping out nest boxes. When's ideal, when you don't have to, all the things. Okay, so my nest boxes are massive. This is my kind of nursery stall for the most part. And you saw the nest box that we had before. So I would sit that one there. I would take a new one, take the straw and fill it up first. So I'll drop it in, and then wherever the hole is, wherever the nest really originally was, if it was in the corner, I would try and make it like that. And then line the clean fur on the bottom, and then put the kits back on top. Do it as quickly as possible. And then whatever extra fur you got, lay it around on top again. Don't get all stressed about this stuff. It'll move and things like that, but try and keep it in the same spot and then swap it out. The other thing that I would do, and what I tend to try to do, it's harder in the wintertime, but I don't use too much cleaners when it comes to the nest boxes. I hose them out as good as possible and then leave them sitting in the sun for about 2 days. The reason I don't tend to do cleaners is because you don't want to give the does a reason to not use it. Some of them can be fussy with smells. Sometimes I've heard of people struggle to get them to use a box. So usually if they're not wanting to use it, there's a reason. So try to figure out why. And so I tend to, again, I'm more of a prevent the problem before it even becomes one type of person. So just see what that potentially could be. The other thing, and I'm going to turn it around, well, maybe you need to see this, I don't know. But like I said, my nest boxes are huge. And so the other thing that you need to be careful of is the kids getting outside of the nest. And so if you find that, just pick them up and put them back in. The girls are annoyed at me. I might as well move before they cause more noise. So that is one disadvantage to the large nest boxes. But they also, because they have such a large breed, they need them to land somewhere, but then not land on the babies. If you do not have enough fur from the original mama, you can use fur from another doe. I have some stored away, but I really try not to, because back to the reasons of we don't want to give her a reason not to do something. The main way that a doe knows if it's her nest or not is through smell. If she can't count the babies, she doesn't know what, the difference is of that. She goes through smell, and obviously she kind of knows where she put it. So that's why I keep them in the same corner, or try to not flip the box around when I put it back. And so what I would do, if you have to use some extra fur and the kids are not fully furred themselves, is put the fur of the new mom on the bottom underneath her babies, so they cover up the smell of that, and then put the rest of her fur over top. Okay, let's talk about temperatures really fast. So this kit that you saw he's gone through probably teens at night in the barn here, and up to like 60 degrees at some point, and now we're back down to the 40s, upper 30s. So he's gone through the whole gamut. Now, the coldest I've ever had a litter born and survive is about like single digits, but I did put a heat lamp on that one. The reason that happened was because we had a surprise work trip that we had to go on. The litter was already bred and all that. So it was like, we just got to survive. So I'll show you how I did that in a minute, but it made it through. And so that's where you just want to don't stress too much, but they can make it through. There was about 5 kits in that litter. At nighttime, it was single digits. During the day, 25 maybe. So they can, like I said, do a lot, as long as the mom gives them a lot of fur. And then now, like that one, he's 2.5-ish weeks old. His eyes are open. He's got a lot of fur. He's fine. He's not sitting there shivering. The only reason he was sitting there ignoring us at that point was he was dumb and got out. So he was warming back up. So they do need somewhere to hide and kind of stay warm and secure, but it's not detrimental. So let's talk about a heat lamp. What we did which actually this one I don't have to move. You can probably just see. So that is just a chicken heat lamp that you can get, but right now it's just got a house light in it. This is a story for another time. This is not for heat. This is for allowing them to think it's daylight hours, because when they're in here and it's not super sunny out, inside the stall, they don't get much light. So that's been causing breeding issues. But you can see the height. This is about 2 feet up. And if it was over top those cages, then it would be about the same. So I put it above the nest where for as low as the kits were, it was almost 3 feet up. And it was one of the chick heater bulbs that was in there. And then I would put a timer on it, just like this, and put it on to be on during the coldest hours for about 12 hours. The reason that I didn't leave it on for during the daytime is because obviously I wanted to build their stability and their tolerance for it. And also I did not want them to have extreme warm during the day, but then really cold at night. So that's one thing you got to be careful with, which is not helpful for rabbits. So that's why I had it come on probably 2 hours before dusk or dark, and then turn off around 10 o'clock in the morning, which is where the sun starts coming up and all that. Always this, now you can see those cages, they have a top on them, but I would always use the ones that have an X over top with wire so that if they fell, they were not going to catch fire. So that's one thing that I think a lot of people risk, and it's not worth it. And so I think it's really dangerous when I get that you guys, you want to keep them as comfortable as possible, but you have to ask yourself, for one, they are out in the weather and they are more used to it than you. But is it worth your barn burning down or your shed burning down for your emotions because you want to make them feel more comfortable and then a fire, starting? I saw this so much last year and the year before, and it slowed a little bit. I think people are realizing like they can handle more than you think, and the risk of the loss and them dying a not good death is not worth the risk of it, because there's still cotton on top, like loose fur and all of that on top of the cages, and that can catch fire, and it's not worth that. So I think you can see it from this angle. Yeah, see where it's got the wire across it? That's like your protection there to make sure that if it lands on something, it's not directly on it, in order to those bulbs are hot. So the bulbs themselves are 250 watt bulbs. The 125, I think is what it is. We bought those on accident one time, and that was for chicks even. They didn't do anything. So the 125s don't do anything. don't do squat. So just avoid that bulb. The other reason I kept it higher was so that mama didn't sit in there and be all warm and cozy and not get off of the nest, because then she's going to squish him. So if your mamas are not that big, probably 5 or 6 pounds or less, then you'll be all right. But when you got 13 to 14 pound does, that's the problem. So I've had that happen to me twice. Years and years ago, I did a heat lamp. She wasn't getting off the nest. She squished him. And then again, this year, which I should have just taken it and given it to the mama who knew what she was doing, I didn't even use a heat lamp this time around, and the nest is nice and cozy, and she's laying in there, and the baby's underneath her to stay warm. She had one too, and she squished it. So that's the other reason why you've got to be really careful of using heat. It can cause more problems than it's worth. It's the last ditch effort of using a heat lamp on a nest. But like I said, 25, they're going to do okay as long as I got the fur that they need. And obviously a single one can survive it. I would have said they would have had to have 2 or 3, but they're doing fine. So the other thing that I think you need to be mindful of, and this barn is an L shape, or at least where the doors are open. So that's the long end. And then over there, it turns into the L shape there. So these stalls are not getting any real wind to speak of. So that is going to be your other thing that you need to be mindful of to keep your rabbits in general out of the cold. So here's a quick summary of the things to remember. Wind first, worry about controlling the wind direction and wind chill. Mama needs lots of fur. If she did not pull a lot of fur and you don't have any backup, I would try and pluck some from around her belly to where it's where they usually pull the fur from anyways, or sometimes they're dewlap. And so the fur has already naturally started to loosen anyway. So if you pull some, that should help her trigger to pull the fur. And then watch for moisture, watch for them, getting out of the nest box. If they get out, put them back in. Only use a heat lamp in the very worst of situations, or if you are not going to be there to check on them. But unless it's like single digits, I wouldn't do it. I've proven, obviously, they can survive in that. And then watch to make sure that mama is not staying in the nest box. Now that leaves me to either you would move the small litters together, try to put, if you need to put kits together that hopefully your breed looks different, you could use a Sharpie marker to put in their left ear a little dot so you know which litter kits came from who. But in my instance, the two kits that were born would have looked different, so I'd have known who came from who. If you're pedigreeing the rabbits, then you definitely need to pay attention to who is who. But if you're just for meat or something, it's not a big deal. Then here's what I want to touch on for shelving. If you don't know what shelving is, it's basically you take the nest box out to mama, let her feed them about twice a day is fine, once or twice, and then take them back into a shelf or somewhere that's a little bit warmer. The only reason you would want to be cautious of this is where are you taking the nest, and is it basically a summer situation and you're taking them back out into like the dead of winter? The reason that is an issue is because it does be a little bit of a shock on their system. And so you need to try and keep it as similar as possible, or at least within ideally 20 degrees. So I used to have a sunroom that was on the back of our house. And so it really just got heated through the sun, obviously hence sunroom. And I would put any animal that was trying to keep warm, but not as warm as the house, in there. And so that always worked out well. But now it's either out here or the basement, which is colder as long as we don't have a fire going. But it's probably 60 degrees in there. And this is like a 40-degree difference. And so that's still not great either. The only other suggestion I would make is if you're more concerned about mama stepping on them, and this is a barn with lots of predators in it. So like it could be mice, it could be rats, snakes, whatever. So I would still, if it's not a heat thing and it's more of a mama thing, and you don't have a way to like putting them in the house wouldn't be ideal, I would still try and sit them in an empty cage to where they're still protected by the wire and other things aren't getting to them as much, or put something over top of them to keep other things out. But if it's more than 20 to 30 degrees difference, I probably wouldn't shelve them just because it goes back to the temperature thing. But if it's like summer and she's being causing issues, then you can put them in your house because the temperature is very similar compared to the winter. Okay, so I hope this helped you calm your nerves around survival of your kits through the winter, and it is doable. Again, if you don't have to do it, I wouldn't. Just for us, I tend to stop from January through March, and then after that, like it's cold, but it's not nearly as bad. So you could breed about March and have them born early April. At the dead of winter, I just try not to do it. So I hope that's helpful for you. I will see you in the next video.